300 videos. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. This is going to be a really, really fun video. Story time with Rich. Unky Rich is going to tell you some stories. So, how I got hired at Wildstorm, which I think is always kind of something interesting, and people do wonder, like, how did you break in? Okay, so I'm just going to skip to where it's getting close to me getting hired at Wildstorm. I've been inking for probably about a year and a half, meaning doing samples. I had met an inker. He would give me photocopies, horrible photocopies. I mean, honestly, like, people always want high-res files. Now, the copies I was working on were garbage in terms of, like, resolution. So I met a guy at San Diego Comic-Con that worked for Image Comics. His name was Petty, P-E-D-I. He kind of drew like Todd McFarlane. Not kind of, he pretty much drew just like Todd McFarlane. He was a very, very talented artist, and he was young. He was like 17 or 18 years old. I was a little tiny bit older than him. Everybody was young breaking in then, though. That was the thing, is we were all young guns. Now we're older guns. So he lived in Irvine, which is about 45 minutes from me, and I met him at Comic-Con. I was really starstruck, honestly, because someone that worked for Image Comics was actually paying attention to me. So I started assisting him up in Irvine. I would drive up, I think, if I remember correctly, maybe like Monday through Friday I would go up there, and I would spend the whole day at his house. He had this beautiful 2-story home that was huge. I mean, it was like him and his brother lived in it. His dad was a brain surgeon, so his family had a lot of money, and his parents, I think, were renting him and his brother this gigantic home. And there was no furniture in the whole thing. Like, there was this loft upstairs that he had that had 4 drawing boards and then comic books everywhere on the floor. I wish I had photos of it, because it was so funny. And the drive up and back to LA just got too much. I was really active in my band still, and really wasn't 100% committed to doing comics, to be 100% honest at that point. I was only doing comics to make money for my band. It was although assisting wasn't a good paying job, I knew if I could break in and actually get a regular gig, quote unquote regular, meaning my own work where I was getting hired to do jobs myself, I'd be making a lot of money, especially in those days. Yeah, so I was like, okay, I need to get samples here. This is an amazing story. If you want to talk about fate grabbing someone and throwing their ass into a certain life situation, this is it. I'm telling you, like, this is so unreal what happened. So I had to make photocopies of my art, and I decided to do it on like a Monday night at midnight when Kinko's actually was 24-hour printing. So, pouring rain, I decided to go down and make my samples at Kinko's. And I'm in there, no one's there, it's just the employees. It's dumping buckets of rain, which is, in San Diego isn't like real common. And a guy comes in, he's making photocopies, and I'm getting my portfolio together, kind of looking at like what he's printing, and it looked like black and white comic stuff. Small, he was printing them small. And out. I started like looking, and I noticed he was wearing a Homage Studios hat. Like, what's going on here? So I went up to him, or we were checking out, and I go, do you work for Homage Studios? And he goes, yeah. And it was an artist named Richard Bennett. He gave me the phone number for Wildstorm, but where this story gets very, very crazy is Richard Bennett, besides J. Scott Campbell, is the only person that I know that actually had a full-size photocopier in his own house, okay? So, when I first went to his house, in his office, he had a closet, and in the closet was a full-size copy machine. And the fact that his copy machine that night didn't work, and he ended up going to Kinko's to make copies at midnight on like a Monday night when it's pouring rain, and I ran into this guy, I do believe is fate in some way, because I was making my portfolio, whatever you call it, my samples to send out. It was just going to be blind shipping them, shipping to Marvel and have them send you a closed letter that they never even opened saying, we don't accept, unsolicited, portfolios, the whole thing. Like, I mean, I didn't have any ins. So that was the in, and it was really, really incredible. So I called Wildstorm, explained to them that I was in San Diego, I had been an ink assistant up at Extreme for the last few months, and I was able to get an interview. So I went in, I met with the editor-in-chief at the time, which was a guy named Bill Kaplan. Bill's a very interesting guy. He's very, very intelligent. He was a Harvard graduate, and very quiet. He doesn't talk a lot. I'm not that way, but I'm good at reading people. But yeah, Bill would like look at your stuff and he would go, And you're just like, man, does this guy hate this shit or does he like it? I can't tell what's going on. So he gave me, I don't even know, maybe like 10 to 13 photocopies of Wildstorm pencils to work on. So I went home, I did my samples, I brought them in probably like 2 or 3 months later. I think at that point, for some reason, Sarah Becker and I had at least become friendly. So she would point out, she goes, oh, I remember, she goes, when I met you, she's like, you were so driven to get in. I've always had the personality, if I set my mind to something, I'm going to achieve it. It was interesting because Aaron Weisenfeld and his brother, Josh, were kind of brought up with the same thing. It's not like my parents didn't tell me that like everything I did was right, but for whatever reason, I just have always believed in myself, and if I want something bad enough, I will get it. I knew that I would get hired at Wildstorm. It was just a matter of like how long was it going to take. And so brought in my first samples. Bill was like, you need to work on this, you need to work on this. And so, that's fine. I actually was humble enough to take the advice. I went home, I did the samples again, and I always stress this to people. Do your sample pages more than once. If you do it one time and it doesn't look that hot, you should be honest with yourself. Don't do an average sample page and think that you knocked it out of the park. Getting it done is not the reward. The reward is being able to improve on what you did, all right? You need to be realistic and honest with yourself. Anyway, so the third time that I came back, Bill was looking at my stuff and he was like pointing out things that were wrong, and it was a Travis page, ironically enough. That Wildcats 15 grifter shooting it up, Voodoo's all beat up, and they're kind of holding her. I think it's Spartan and Zealot are like sort of standing above her, holding her. You grab your Wildcats 15 and look at what the original Troy Hubs inks looked like on it. And anyway, so when Bill went over that page, he was pointing out things that he thought that I had drifted from the pencils, and I said, well, look, I go, if you look at what I did and you look at what you published, I actually did it better than the guy that was published in the book. And it kind of like, I saw a look in like Bill's eyes and face, like where it was like he had to stop for a second. It was kind of interesting because it was a more, I don't want to call it human moment, but anyway, it was like Bill kind of like sort of like went, whoa. And he agreed with me that I had actually done a more accurate representation of Travis's pencils than Troy had. And so anyway, I left. Nothing happened. I didn't get a job offer, but I got a call from a friend of mine that night going, hey, I think you're getting work from Wildstorm. And I said, really? I go, why? He goes, well, they called me and wanted to get your phone number, which I don't know why they didn't have my phone number, but I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I think you're gonna get work from them. And I was like, okay, like this is pretty exciting. Is this a good 300th episode for YouTube? The moment that Rich went from nobody to somebody, I don't know. So, but for whatever reason, I just have always believed in myself, and if I want something bad enough, I will get it.